And Pete, what kind of, I know you say the drones you just showed us are not necessarily the easiest one to start with, but what's the reaction that you get from the kids when they either see you guys race or when they put their hands on the controller?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Kim was saying. Their faces light up, they see it flying around. Even the young kids, 3, 4 years old, they come in there with their parents and their brothers or sisters, and they're mesmerized by it. And I think the kids these days just have uh, they're born into it. Number one, so it's not foreign to them. Um, they already have the muscle memory from playing video games, and they have that sharp hand-to-eye coordination. And so these kids, I see them coming up, from the first race where they can barely get around, and within 3, 4 months, they're up and running, and they're beating older guys that have been doing it for a while. So it's really interesting to see, and it's kind of like what was Kim was saying. You learn a lot of skills in this hobby. Not only flying the drones, but we learn how to repair them ourselves. We learn about electronics. We learn about soldering. We learn about video transmissions, radio frequencies, getting the ham licenses, and then up to 107s and all of that. So it encompasses a lot, starting out with just a fun little thing to fly around your house.
Well, and you also sell bigger FPV, like full-size FPV. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that as well, and explain to our audience, which most of them are pilots, the difference in flying those FPV drone versus what they're might be used to right now.
Right. So the biggest difference between the FPV drones, besides obviously line of sight and first person view, would be that the FPV drones, we fly them in acro mode or manual mode. So as opposed to the DJI type drones, those usually have stabilization on them. They're made for smooth, aerial photography, cinematic shots, things like that. I guess one of the big things right now in the cinematic world is the birth of the Cinewhoop. I'm not sure if you guys know what that is, but it's kind of a combination between the little tiny whoop and the bigger ones. They're about 3 to 4 inches as far as the propeller size, and they can carry a GoPro, so you can get that HD footage. A lot of guys have now been stripping or decasing their GoPros to save weight, and you can get them down now to pretty small form factor, and you can get some pretty cool shots out there that you couldn't get with the bigger FPV type drones. But then there's also long range guys. They run 7-inch or bigger. And what they do is they like to go climb up mountains, the side of the mountain, and get that nice outdoorsy kind of, footage that you couldn't get anywhere else. So yeah, there's a big difference between a lot of it. One of the things is that the FPV drones can go faster, and you can keep up a lot more with moving objects such as drift cars or race cars. I know that right now NASCAR has been using some FPV guys flying, and it looks like it's just the beginning right now, Chris. Things to come.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we have an FPV category this year in the festival, and I would encourage people to watch the award ceremony on Saturday, because it's some of the most amazing shots. And I think, and I've been saying that for a couple of years, but I think we're really starting to see the influence of FPV in the world of cinematography, right? Because it's really a tool that's the only tool that can create those type of shots. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of guys like me that are doing cinematography, that are looking at FPV saying, I think I need to learn how to do this. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about how difficult it is to transition from your traditional flying to putting on those goggles and flying something that, like you're talking, like the 5 to 7 inches or
Right.
above, that can carry a good camera on it.
So, with the DJI guys, you pretty much already have your sticks down. We use the same Mode 2 style of the configuration of the stick. So the left is going to be your throttle up and down. The right is your pitch and your roll, yaw on the left. So those things are the same. One of the, I think one of the things that a lot of the line of sight guys, they have a hard time getting used to just looking forward, and turning left is always going to be left and right is always going to be right. For me, I have a harder time flying line of sight because I'm not that good. I get disoriented pretty easily. So it just depends. But I think FPV is a little easier in that sense because you don't lose your orientation as easily. But there is a lot of throttle management. So I know the DJI guys are used to just keeping one throttle, at a steady set speed, whereas FPV, you always have to be adjusting that throttle to compensate for your to be able to fly at a level flight. So that would probably be one of the biggest hurdles. The good thing is that the radios nowadays, they do hook up to your computer via USB, and you can download a simulator. They're anywhere from about $5 to $20, depending on which one you get. A lot of them have come a long way. When I first started out, we didn't have simulators, so I had to do it the old school way and break a bunch of stuff. So I always tell people that want to get into it to, get a good radio, get the simulator, spend about 5 to 10 hours on it, familiarize yourself. That way, before you go to the park, you'll already know your craft a little bit better, and you'll know how to maneuver it. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, and listen, I think I'd love to believe you. Like, as a traditional pilot, we think, no, what we do is a lot harder, so I should be able to transition to FPV because of that sense of direction that's a little tricky to keep when you're flying traditional drones. But I also heard from a lot of friends that did try to transition that it's actually pretty complicated to make that switch. So, but I'll have to try and pay for the extra parts that I would need on my to crash, because I heard that's part of the game too.
Yep.
Kim, let me jump to you, and you talked about coding earlier, and I didn't even know you could code those telos.
Yes.
Tell me how you use that. What do you code? What do you have those kids code, and how do you use that with the telos?
So one of the things that we were doing with the telos is doing a form of racing, and we would set up the racing track like you would see with FPV, and but instead of the kids going and trying to fly it for speed, you give them the track with the measurements of the heights and the distances give that to them, and then they code their drones to be able to complete the track. And so they have to really think about taking that from being on a paper to fixing it in their mind, so that spatial recognition, thinking about the speeds that they want to go at, what could go wrong, so troubleshooting and managing risk. And then you have them race them around it. And to be honest, it's not who does it the fastest, it's who could do it without crashing. But I think it's that way in FPV too.
Right.
So that's one of the things. The other things that we like to do with the drones is give the students a task to achieve. And this is where we start bringing in things like math and physics and engineering. Is you tell them how big the drone is, how much it can carry. You give them supplies with the telos. It's like string and little, the little tiny paper cups that you use to get pills in at the doctor or at the hospital. And you give them a task that, for example, they're going in to rescue or to deliver supplies to someone who has, fallen down a cliff. So their drone has to be able to lift this much weight in supplies. So then they have to take their supplies and weigh them. And, we don't use real supplies. We use like paper clips, things like that. But they have to figure out the weight and then calculate, okay, what do they have to have What are the nice to haves? How much can my drone carry? How far can it go? How long will my battery last? How fast can it go? What are things, with this little, and then they have to design the thing that'll carry it. So they're having to tie strings onto this little tiny cup. And then figuring out, with that extra drag, what's going to happen. So it really allows them to bring in things that they don't realize they're doing. So engineering, physics, math, science, and it makes learning those things fun. And it's, as a teacher, I think kids should be doing real world things, but I also think they should be having fun doing it. So when you can give them a real world challenge, delivering supplies to someone, bring in drones, and then they have to figure out the math that they have to do around it. They have to think about physics. They don't even realize that they're doing any learning. They just think they're having fun. And that's why I love drones.
I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but it's not just kids that are having fun with drones, but I saw you introduce drones to your parents, Kim. So
Yes.
I think was it your mom that I saw flying your drone?
Well, no, actually, it was my mom was the first one to start flying. She got herself a little Mavic Air, and so I went back. She wouldn't touch it until I got back because they live in Arkansas. So I went back and we got the drone out, and I showed my mom. I put it on beginner mode and taught her how to take it up and fly it around. And we were playing around the backyard. And then the next evening we went in the front yard and I took it off beginner mode. And I'm like, okay, Mom. And I start talking and she takes off and woo, she split the power lines, not over them, not under them. She went through them, heads out across their front pasture at full speed, going to my sister lives about a half mile away, full speed across their front pasture, just. And I'm like, Mom. and my mom is 69. So doing it. And then I told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, do you want to fly Mom? I'm not flying it. So my dad had one of the he'd got himself one of the cheap Walmart ones. So I'm trying to show him how to do that. And we take it off and it gets off the ground. And immediately I have a flyaway and it crashes into the tree. And he's like, well, I'm glad you did that and not me. So this summer, we actually got my dad his own drone because he was terrified of flying my mom's because he didn't want to crash it. Because when I was a little kid, my dad loved RCs. And so he had RC planes, RC cars, RC boats, and they never lasted more than about 3 hours before he crashed them. So he was terrified he was going to do that with the drone. So I did the same thing with him. I put it in beginner mode, showed him how to take off and how to launch it. And he's like, well, this thing's actually pretty easy to fly. And he's like, well, what if something goes wrong? I said, just let go of the sticks, which, Pete, that's one of my biggest challenges of going from a regular drone to a FPV. I can't just let go of the stick.
Right.
It doesn't hover, it falls out of the sky.
Right. Yeah.
So I had him and he just let go of the sticks and he's like, well, it's not moving. I'm like, yeah, I said, it's got stabilization. So got my dad to flying, and my dad's 73. And so pretty soon he got real comfortable. Now he goes over the power lines. He doesn't split them, but he goes out and he's like going, oh, I can see my cows, because he's a cattle rancher. So he starts watching the cows and then he's getting down lower and then he's noticing the cows are moving. My dad is now using his drone to herd cattle.
That's awesome.
And it's great because, my dad is my mom is pretty good with technology. My dad hates it. And for him, it was so much fun. And they've got a 200 and something acre ranch. And so he was out flying off and looking at things he'd never seen on the ranch. Oh. Then he got nosy and flew over to the neighbor's house. But, he just, he started exploring, and because it's very, very woody where they're at. And he's like, wow, I didn't know there was that opening in the trees and you could see the creek from here. So it really, for him, it was just a sense of freedom, and for my mom too. And they love it. And like now, my dad can't wait for the winter because you have to go out and check on your cows. Well, now he's going, I can use my drone to go check on them rather than getting out on my tractor and driving across. So he's been practicing not scaring the cows, but going and being able to check on the cattle with the drone so that when it does get cold, he has that option now. So
yeah, so fun. It
it's
was
a
fun to
lot of
watch.
fun.
Fun to watch some of those pictures of your family enjoying that.